in the spirit of the 4th of May, International Bullying Day, where the world pledges to stop school violence, we are still focused on Adolescence, the trending Netflix series, which has opened up a Pandora box showcasing the tragic results when young boys become victims of misogynistic influences. In an era where science and data should guide our understanding of human behavior, a disturbing trend persists in online echo chambers. The rise of the so-called Manosphere. It is a web of blogs, forums, and influencers, and they claim to represent a new form of male empowerment. In reality, it is often a repacking of misogyny and pseudoscience cloaked in language that mimics legitimacy but fails to hold up under scrutiny. So says Mr. Chris Jooste. And I'm very privileged to interview Mr. Chris Jooste. He's an MSc graduate in genetics from the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa with a specialization in neuropsychiatric genetics. Chris, please tell us why you agreed to this interview.
Of course. Well, the thing is, as someone in the fields of women's health, mental health, and genetics, I feel compelled to address the disturbing misuse of biological and psychological science often found in these circles, and to clarify what the science actually says.
Great. Okay. A central trope in this manosphere ideology is the belief that men and women are hardwired to behave in ways that reinforce patriarchal dominance. Now, terms like alpha male and beta are thrown around to create the illusion of a scientific credibility. And what is your take on this?
Yeah. So these ideas supposedly stem from the evolutionary psychology, yet they reflect a crude misunderstanding of how evolution and human behavior work. This concept of the alpha male itself was actually originally borrowed from a very outdated study on captive wolves, and the modern ethology has thoroughly debunked this model, even among wolves. So in natural setting, wolf packs are structured around family units, led by parental pairs, male and female, not rigid dominance hierarchies. And the idea of an alpha male dominating through aggression was based on artificial conditions, not real-world wolf behavior. And applying this to humans is actually not only biologically inaccurate, but intellectually dishonest. Because in reality, human attraction and behavior are complex, context-dependent, and influenced by environmental culture. So, an individual personality. So, no credible genetic or epigenetic data supports this deterministic binary that women are biologically programmed to mate with alphas for procreation and betas for stability. This framework is not only scientifically invalid, it's socially dangerous.
I'm very glad you cleared that up. Now, in the manosphere, the red pill metaphor, it claims to awaken men to the truth about feminism, which then they accuse is creating this misandrist society. So what are your views on this?
Yeah, so their claims often misuse or misinterpret scientific ideas about biology and sex differences and social behavior. For example, the manosphere often references testosterone as the root of male assertiveness and dominance, implying a genetic justification for aggression or control. Others invoke the serotonin system as a supposed proof of hierarchical dominance, and it's natural or it's biologically preordained. In reality, the serotonin system is, even in simple complex organisms, affects posture and motor behavior during fights. So it's not exactly leadership or morality. And the human serotonin system is, of course, far, far more complex and influenced by context, experience, environment. And as someone who practices MMA as a hobby, I can confirm my posture hasn't yet contributed to my dominance. And that's not to discredit the positive effect of body language. It's just not quite that simple or direct. Even testosterone, frequently dubbed as the sort of dominance hormone, plays a diverse role both in men and women, including mood regulation, metabolism, reproductive health. It's not a biological mandate for control or violence. It's similarly hormones like estrogen and oxytocin, which is obviously or often said to be female, quote unquote, play crucial roles in resilience and social bonding, emotional regulation, and assertive behavior as well. So these are not indicators of weakness. They're core to survival and cooperation. And while hormones do influence behavior, they do not dictate morality, social structure. Biology is not a justification for inequality.
Definitely. The manosphere narratives then also frequently center around the belief that society under feminism influence is hostile to men. So is there any empirical evidence to this?
Short answer, there is no empirical evidence to support systemic misandry in institutions, and no genetic or neurobiological or sociological data that suggests that women are inherently manipulative or deceitful by nature, as is often claimed in these spaces, like you said. So from a scientific standpoint, behavioral traits like aggression and empathy and dominance or manipulation are polygenic and context dependent. So these behaviors emerge from the intersection of thousands of genes with environmental inputs such as trauma, upbringing, social systems. There's no man-hating gene, nor is there any evidence that women possess an innate tendency towards deceit or dominance over men. In fact, in stark contrast, history is filled with examples of systemic suffering endured by women, denied access to education, barred from voting, refused credit, ownership, legal agencies subjected to violence, silenced in courtrooms, institutionalized for speaking out, and even executed for being perceived threats to male authority. So feminism arose, as we know, not from the hatred of men, but from centuries of very, very well-documented inequality and erasure. And yet the manosphere ideologues twist this evolutionary biology to suit their narrative. They cherry-pick pseudoscientific claims while ignoring actual data. And they weaponize anecdote as proof to dismiss or the far more consistent global pattern of female disenfranchisement. So their worldview is not supported by genetics, it's not supported by history, and it's not supported by ethics. Instead, the manosphere cherry picks anecdotes and twists evolutionary concepts to rationalize sexism. They confuse statistical tendencies with universal truths, and use flawed logic to justify dehumanizing rhetoric. They also completely ignore the abundance of anecdotes that tell the same story, but the other way around.
Yes. And this is the influence on our young boys. Okay. And, there's a very complicated interplay between neuroscience and epigenetics and psychology in human behavior. So I know a lot about neuropsychology and psychology, but not epigenetics. So can you expand on this?
I would love to. So contemporary genetics and neuroscience teaches us that behavior emerges as a dynamic interaction between genes, the brain, environment, and social context. Epigenetics has shown us that trauma, parenting, nutrition, and social support shape the brain development far more than innate dominance hierarchies. So genetics shows us that behavioral traits such as aggression or empathy and dominance are polygenic, many genes, shaped by all acting together, and so each with a small effect as well. These traits are strongly modulated by life experience, so there is no dominance gene, and certainly no biological blueprint for hierarchical superiority. Neuroscience teaches us that human brains are very plastic. The brain structure involves empathy, impulse control, social behavior, like the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which are continuously shaped by environment, trauma, and learning. And people are not born locked into these behavioral types. Epigenetics has shown us that external experiences like parenting, trauma, stress, nutrition, they can leave chemical marks on the DNA that regulate gene expression. These marks can influence mood, stress response, cognitive development, and in some cases are relevant and can actually be passed on intergenerationally. And then, as you would know, psychology and behavioral science show us that social learning, attachment, and cultural influences heavily shape our behavior over time. The roles, expectations, and behaviors assigned to men and women are not hardwired. They are socially constructed and learned. There is no legitimate forensic, genetic, or psychological science that supports the manosphere's portrayal of women as inherently deceptive or men as genetically oppressed.
Yeah. What I like very much is the way that you describe the brain. People tend to forget that the brain is a living, organ. it changes. If something that, you just take me to life, if you're very negative, you'll actually see it in the brain. Now, I always explain to them, if you only exercise your one arm, that muscle will be big, but the other one not. So, and you can actually open the brain, which I always tell people, don't do it. It's a bit messy, but you can see the left and the right amygdala would have different sizes depending on whether you're negative or positive, but you can change it.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of highways. So from a scientific, you have these myelin sheaths, which are basically dictate how fast action potentials can travel along neurons. And so the more you do something, the more you get into specific types of thinking patterns, the stronger that connection becomes. And it's like a highway that gets built. So if you want to change behavior, you need to take the dirt road and start paving that. So yeah, exactly as you said, it's very interesting. You can open it and physically see this effect.
Yes. Yeah. I use the metaphor of to change a neural path. And, we are South Africans and we have felt, where grass grows tall. And I say, if we walk on that little footpath, it eventually becomes hard. And if you need to make a new neural path and you look at the field and the grass is tall, yes, it's tall because you never walked there. So the moment you start walking and you start trampling the grass and it goes flat, okay, and eventually, the more you do it, you'll have a rock solid, hard path going through it. And if you don't walk on the other path, the grass will grow there. And this is how neural paths can actually change.
It is almost as simple as use it or lose it.
Yes. And it's knowing that you can actually change it if you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
It's very nice. So what would your summary be in conclusion on this topic?
Well, as professionals committed to the truth, justice, we must confront ideologies that weaponize science to justify harm. The Manosphere is not a space for valid scientific discourse. It's a feedback loop for resentment and poorly interpreted studies and confirmation bias. So real science empowers men and women alike. It helps us understand behavior without resorting to blame. It promotes growth, empathy, accountability, not misogyny disguised as evolution. And so let's be clear, the Manosphere, it's not real science. It's pseudoscience, it's radicalization, and it's misinformation wrapped in internet jargon.
Definitely. Thank you very much. So to everybody who's viewing here, that you have a scientific, intelligent take on what is really going on. Thank you very much, Chris, for this insightful interview. And Chris, you're also the director of the Blue Rose Outreach Program, and where you lead mental health awareness initiatives and research projects. You specialize in neuropsychiatric genetics, particularly in schizophrenia among the underrepresented populations. And can you give us your website and just give us a few sentences on what you do there?
Of course. So absolutely. As you said, the website is, you can find it at bluerosefamily.co.za. And so what we do is we apply for grant applications and funding to do specific mental health related projects. The projects change depending on what the niches and the needs are for the year. But we also do a lot of public speaking, events and sort of tell people what they, especially in South African context, what their resources are. For instance, a very important one that a lot of people don't know about, it's called PMB, Prescribed Minimum Benefits. Here in South Africa, if you're part of a life insurance, you can get up to 15 free sessions of with a therapist or a psychiatrist. And a lot of people just don't know about something so basic and so available to them. So we tell people about their resources and we fund research projects that enhance mental health in any space that we can. And we also have other projects, but that's the mental health side of it, yeah.
That's great. So everybody who's not yet a Patreon member, please join Patreon, where we will give you more on this very interesting topic of the Manosphere and pseudoscience, debunking the whole Manosphere ideology. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.